Good morning, Algebra 2. Today, we use the quadratic formula to find the solutions, the zeros, the x-intercepts, the roots of the quadratic equation. Our quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, and all of that is going to be divided by 2 times a. All right, so our first step is to write the quadratic equation in standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Then we're going to identify the a, the b, and the c, and we're going to substitute them into our quadratic formula. And then our last step is we're going to simplify. Now, simplify is more than just finding an answer. Remember, you're looking for two possible solutions. And we also need to make sure that we simplify radicals in imaginary solutions. Okay, so let's look at a couple examples here. Number one, the first step is to write it in standard form. It is already in standard form. X squared plus 2x minus 63 equals 0. We're going to identify the a, the b, and the c. The a value is in front of your x squared, and there's a 1 there. Your b value is a 2, and your c value is a negative 63. Now we're going to plug those into our formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c. All of that divided by 2 times a. All right, so let's plug that in. We have x equals, our b value is 2, so negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, my b value again is 2, I'm going to square that, minus 4 times my a value, which is 1, times my c value, which is negative 63. All of that is going to be divided by 2 times my a value, which is 1. Okay, so I would simplify what's inside the radical first. Please do not try to put all of this in your calculator. It's really not possible to do that. So negative 2 plus or minus the square root. We have 2 squared, which is 4, minus 4 times 1 times negative 63 becomes positive 252. And all of that is going to be divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. Okay, so let's continue to simplify. X equals negative 2 plus or minus 4 plus 252 is 256 divided by 2. Let's continue to simplify. Negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 256 is 16. All of that divided by 2. So we have x equals negative 2 plus 16 divided by 2. This is how you get your two solutions. And x equals negative 2 minus 16 divided by 2. Negative 2 plus 16 is 14, and 14 divided by 2 is 7. Negative 2 minus 16 is negative 18, and negative 18 divided by 2 is negative 9. So my solution to this quadratic is x equals negative 9 and 7. And again, remember our solutions are where it crosses the x-axis, also called roots. All right, let's take a look at number 3 now. We have negative x squared plus 2x equals 1. Remember, our first step is to get it in standard form. We need to take this 1 and move it to the other side of the equal sign. So we have negative x squared plus 2x minus 1 equals 0. Put this up here. Our a value is a negative 1. Our b value is a 2, and our c value is negative 1 also. Let's plug that into our formula. Write our formula down again. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all of that divided by 2 times a. All right, so x equals negative our b value, which is 2, plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times negative 1 times c, which is also negative 1. All of that divided by 2 times our a value, which is negative 1. Now let's start to simplify. X equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root. 2 squared is 4. Negative 4 times negative 1 times negative 1 is minus 4. And all of that is going to be divided by negative 2. Get rid of my excess there. All right, so continuing to simplify, now we have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 minus 4 is 0, divided by negative 2. This part right here becomes 0, plus or minus 0. So we have negative 2 divided by negative 2, which is positive 1. So my solution set then is 1. So in this case, we only have one solution. And what that means is that our quadratic will come up and touch at 1 and then change direction. That's why we have one solution here. All right, let's take a look at number 11. Go skip all the way to number 11. It is already in standard form. Negative 3x squared plus 8x minus 7 equals 0. My a value is negative 3. My b value is 8. And my c value is negative 7. Let's plug that into our formula. Our formula is negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c, all of that divided by 2 times a. Here we go. X equals negative b. Our b value is 8. Plus or minus our b value squared minus 4 times our a value, which is negative 3, times our c value, which is a negative 7. And all of that is going to be divided by 2 times our a value, which is negative 3. Okay, let's start to simplify. X equals negative 8 plus or minus 8 squared is 64. You have negative 4 times negative 3 times negative 7, which is minus 84. And all of that is divided by a negative 6. Continuing to simplify here, we have x equals negative 8 plus or minus the square root. 64 minus 84 is negative 20. And that's going to be divided by negative 6. All right, so now we need to take a look at our radical here. First of all, it's negative. And it also can be broken down because there is a perfect square that divides evenly into 20. So let's break this down before we move on with our simplification here. So the square root of negative 20, remember, anytime we have a negative, we will factor that out as a negative 1. And then the perfect square that divides evenly into 20 is 4, and that leaves us with a 5 left over. Square root of negative 1 is an I. Square root of 4 is a 2, and square root of 5 is just going to remain in our answer, okay? All right, so let's continue on here with our simplification. We have x equals negative 8 plus or minus. Remember, the proper way to write it is your whole number, your imaginary, and then your radical. And that's all going to be divided by negative 6. Okay, looks like we're almost done. But if you look, this whole number here, this whole number here, and that whole number here, they can all be divided by a common factor. So we need to reduce this answer, okay? Negative 8, 2, and 6 are all divisible by a negative 2. Get rid of some of these negatives for us. So we're going to divide all of these by a negative 2. Negative 8 divided by negative 2 is 4. Plus or minus 2 divided by negative 2 is still going to be plus or minus the I square root of 5. And then negative 6 divided by negative 2 is a 3. So there's our final answer. This is our solution set. Our two answers come from this plus or minus right there. And it's going to be imaginary solutions because we have that I in our answer. Okay, that's it.